Thank you, Song. Hello, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see everyone on via Zoom, and I'd like to share my PowerPoint. Just for a minute. Okay, can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Okay.
Hope so. Slideshow from beginning. Okay. Pachappa camp was unknown until I accidentally discovered around 2016, 2017. And since then, I've done extensive research on this Pachappa camp, also known as Dosan's Republic. And in the beginning, I really didn't understand why it was called Dosan's Republic. And now I know why it was called Dosan's Republic. Dosan is a pen name of Ahn Chang-ho, one of the most important modern historical figure in Korea, as well as Korean American community. And so title of my talk is Dosan's Republic, Pachappa Camp, the first Koreatown in the United States. And I'm a firm believer of understanding, knowing Korean American history or history in general. And unless people know their history, their identity is anchorless. That's what I believe in. And I've been telling this to my students wherever I can. And Korean immigration history can be divided into 4 different stages. Between 1882 in 1902, a small number of diplomats, approximately 200 or so ginseng merchants and students arrived before 1902. And between 1903 and 1924, approximately a little less than 8,000 Korean immigrant laborers arrived in Hawaii as a sugar plantation laborers. Approximately another 800 to 1,000 Korean women came as a picture brides and political exiles and students. So official Korean immigration to the United States began on January 13, 1903. That's the reason why we've designated January 13 as a Korean American Day, and we have been celebrating since 2005. Every January 13, we commemorate and try to understand the historical meaning of arrival of 121 Korean immigrants from Incheon, Jeonbuk, and so that's the official beginning of Korean immigration to the United States. But Asian immigration, all Asian immigration stopped as of 1924 because of passage of Immigration Act of 1924, which eliminated all Asian immigration altogether. Korean immigration to the United States resumes around 1950 with outbreak of Korean War in June 25th, 1950. And between 1950 and 64, war brides, orphans, and students and diplomats arrive. Still, Korean American population in the United States was still very small. As of 1970, total Korean American population in the United States was less than 70,000. However, it all changed with passage of Immigration Act of 1965, and the Korean immigrant community began to grow in terms of numbers and quality. And they are known as new urban immigrants because unlike traditional immigrants who tend to come from poor rural background, Korean immigrants who came after 1965 were highly educated from middle class, upper middle class background, and mostly from urban areas such as Seoul and Tucson, Incheon, Daegu. So, but today I'll be focusing mainly on second stage between 1903 to approximately 1918. And this is a newspaper article in Honolulu, reporting about arrival of Korean immigrant workers. And state of California designated as a Dosan Ahn Chang-ho Day in his birthday on August 13, 2018. And the city of Riverside designated former Pachappa campsite as a point of cultural interest on March 23rd, 2017. March 23rd is the day the Dosan Ahn Chang-ho arrived from San Francisco to Riverside in 1904. That's the reason why they've designated this. And in 2001, city of Riverside with Korean American community erected the statue of Ahn Chang-ho and with Dosan Ahn Chang-ho Memorial Foundation. At the time, we did not know anything about Pachappa camp. We simply knew that Ahn Chang-ho came to Riverside to pick oranges. This is the famous photograph of him in Riverside picking oranges. And based on my research, we had very successful exhibition at the Culver Center, UCR Arts, between October 16, 2021 and February 28, 2022. And as this exhibition, a small exhibition, but it received national, international attention as the New York Times, LA Times, PBS NewsHour, and NBC News. They all covered the story of Pachappa camp exhibition. Now, I'm not going to show this today. It's about 6.5 minutes long. It's available on YouTube. If we have a time later on, I'll be more than happy to show this YouTube video of a PBS NewsHour coverage of the Pachappa camp exhibition. And it generated second highest major media press coverage in history of UCR Arts, including New York Times, LA Times, PBS NewsHour, NBC News, NPR, JTBC, SBS, I mean, you name it. And this is another photograph of Helen Ahn, wife of Dosan Ahn Chang-ho, with his eldest son, Philip Ahn, holding oranges. And Philip Ahn is one of the most famous Asian American actor until 1970s. And Philip Ahn is the first Asian American actor to receive a star and Walk of Fame in Hollywood Boulevard. And he appeared more than 200 movies, TV dramas, perhaps most famous for a TV series Kung Fu during 1970s, Blind Master. I'm going to skip this. And whole research project began around 2016 or early 2017, and with this map. This map was produced by Sanborn Insurance Company of New York in 1908. It shows downtown Riverside, and it says here, small print, Korean settlement. Korean settlement. And this map was accidentally discovered by UCR undergrad students around early 2000. And I knew of this map, but I didn't do anything until 2016. And I decided maybe I should look into this. I've never heard of Korean settlement in Riverside in early 1900. There is nothing written, anything about Korean settlement in Riverside anywhere. Ahn Chang-ho is very famous historical figure. There are tons of materials written about him. His biography is about 300-400 pages long. There are lots of articles written about him, but none of them mention anything about Pachappa or Dosan's Republic. So I decided to look into it. Maybe I could write an article, maybe. I began looking into it. And this is the physical address change that I was able to uncover. In 1908, it was 1532 Pachappa Avenue. Since then, it changed, and today is 3096 Cottage Street. And this is another very important historical photograph. And this is a gauge canal. Because of this gauge canal, Riverside was able to prosper in the citrus industry because with the water, they were able to develop orange grove and citrus industry in Riverside. And this is delegates of Korean National Association with their family members and who came to Riverside in 1911. And this is another interesting photograph. This time, Ahn Chang-ho is a photographer. He's taking this delegate photographs. Remember, same photo is different angle. So this is another very interesting photograph. Ahn Chang-ho taking photo of this delegate. Maybe that's oh yeah, no, it's a different angle. That's Ahn Chang-ho, but anyway. And this is another possibly picnicking of Insu Kim's family. Pachappa camp, I don't know, because in 1918, Pachappa camp disappeared and they relocated to nearby Vine Street. So whether this is a Pachappa camp or not is still unclear, but possibly. And this is a Catherine, Violet Catherine Kim's photograph, who is a youngest daughter of Young Kim, who served as a caretaker of Pachappa camp. The Pachappa camp story goes like this. Ahn Chang-ho arrives in San Francisco via Vancouver and Seattle on October 14, 1902. At the time, San Francisco is hotbed of anti-Asian violence, just like what we witnessed over the last 3-4 years, anti-Asian violence. And unable to find work or employment, he decided to relocate to Riverside, arrived in March 23rd, 1904. As soon as he arrived, he established Korean Labor Bureau, which is an employment agency, as well as a 국립협회, a cooperative association, which is a political organization for independence movement. And also established a Korean mission affiliated with local Riverside Calvary Presbyterian Church. And Korean National Association became very important organ for Korean immigrants until 1930s and the 1940s. And like I said before, I was not able to find any literature in the beginning, but as I began to look into different historical records and newspapers, I was able to piece it by piece together. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. As I find one piece of information, I was trying to fit it somewhere. And one of the most important, remarkable thing about Pachappa camp was it was a family-based and democratically run community. This is remarkable because it began around 1904 and 1905. Korea was still ruled by King of Korea, Gojong, and it was a monarchy. And yet in the 1905 in Riverside, they will have experimenting with democratic principle, democracy, as well as a family community, family-based community, because at the time, majority of Asian immigrant community was known as bachelor society. 90% of the resident of Chinatown, Manila town, was bachelor, young single men because of immigration law. Immigration law prohibited immigration of Asian women. But Pachappa camp was different, which was remarkable. And Ahn Chang-ho devised a so-called Pachappa camp plan. He says, physically strong, experienced Koreans were to be sent to the Riverside Orchard as sample labor force. They were told to construct their own living quarters as soon as they arrived without asking for any money from Americans. They were to organize a working team of 10 men. Each man on the team was supposed to follow the working guidelines. Our only capital today in this land is nothing but honesty, which is honesty is the most important virtue of Ahn Chang-ho teaching. We work diligently without wasting time, whether your employer watches you or not. Then you will be working not only today, but tomorrow and the whole year round. If your employer has a confidence in you, then your friends, Kim, Lee, Park, will also get jobs because of your hard and honest work. This was Pachappa camp plan devised by Ahn Chang-ho, and which became very successful. And so they were able to, recruit more workers. At the time, the labor contracting was monopolized by the Japanese Americans. The Japanese immigrant labor contractors monopolized labor contracting business, and the Korean immigrants had a hard time finding employment. And that's why the Ahn Chang-ho established Korean Labor Bureau and Korean Labor Bureau. This was and he said, when you pick an orange, you pick it for your homeland. When you clean toilet, you do it for your country. That was the basic principles of Ahn Chang-ho. And we must pick the orange as if our country's future depends on it. And physical description of Pachappa camp is it's like a shanty town, very poor living condition. Live in a small shack built in 1880s. Originally, it was built by Chinese railroad construction workers in 1880s. Time made the lumber shrink as the wind blew through the cracks in the walls. No pretense of making it livable. Just 4 walls, 1 window, 1 door, nothing else. We put mud in the cracks to keep the wind out. A water pump served several shacks. We had to heat our bath water in a bucket over the open fire outside, then pour it into the tin tub inside. No gas and no electricity, kerosene lamps. One of my chores was to trim the wicks, clean the glass tops, and to keep the bowls filled with kerosene. And so then the question becomes, how can I claim Pachappa camp was the first Koreatown in America? After all, Korean immigrants landed in Honolulu, Hawaii first. In the mainland, it was San Francisco, not Riverside. And then how and why Pachappa camp served as the first Koreatown. First of all, unlike other places, it was a family-based, women and children. And Dosan's leadership, Dosan's Republic, Democratic Principle, Korean Labor Bureau, and many other independent organizations, including Korean National Association. And it was not simply a labor camp, but community consists of weddings, birthday parties, Korean mission, discussion groups, whatnot. And then another very important historical event took place in 1913 in the Hemet Valley incident. And as a result, Koreans in the United States were not designated not as a Japanese subject. Instead, they were recognized as a Koreans, not Japanese subject, which is a very important semi-quasi legal definition in America, because Korea didn't exist. Korea was colony of Japan between 1910 and 1945. And yet, the United States government granted a quasi Korean unique distinction, people without country status. The reason why Korean, I can claim Pachappa camp is the first Koreatown, not Honolulu, not San Francisco, is because once the Korean immigrants landed in Honolulu, they were scattered, they were dispersed to different islands. And different islands, they were scattered, dispersed to different plantations. So they were living and working inside the plantation for 3-4 years. So they were not able to establish their own physical community in Hawaii until later on, 1906 or 7. In San Francisco, those who arrived in San Francisco, they were living kind of outskirts of a Chinatown. At the time, Asians were not allowed to live in outside of a Chinatown boundaries. So they were kind of scattered outside of Chinatown. So they really couldn't establish their own physical community in the San Francisco either. Whereas in Pachappa camp, we know the address, 1532 Pachappa Avenue. That's the reason why it was called Pachappa camp. And they lived and worked, established a community of their own, all kinds of community activities, as well as independence activities until 1918. And in the beginning, I thought the number was very small. I thought maybe 60 or so, but it turns out it was much larger than that. 국립신보 in December 21st, 1905, said 국립협회 members in San Francisco was 103 and Riverside 70. But this is kind of a misnomer because it only includes 국립협회 members, which is only men. But if you include women and children, the number could be over 100 already as of 1905. In 2 years later, San Francisco Korean community increased to 291, Riverside to double, more than double, 150. But if you include women and children, it could be well over 200. And during the picking season, orange picking season, December to February, they also recruited temporary workers, more than 100 temporary workers. So at the peak season, it could be more than 300, and which is a significant number because at the time, the total Korean immigrant population in mainland United States was no more than 800. Of that, 300 or more were living and working in Pachappa camp, so which is very important. And Minbo is a New Korea, is a kind of a paper published by the New Korean National Association, reported on October 5th, 1910. And when I found this article, I was so jubilant because it says, Riverside is the first Koreatown in the United States. That's what it says in the newspaper. And first Korean National Association chapter also was established in Riverside. And also another literature written by Isak Emerson Char, who wrote an autobiography called Golden Mountain. He says, it has soon become the first largest Korean settlement in America, at least during the orange season of each year for a number of years. Subsequently, smaller Korean communities or camps sprung up in the nearby town of Redlands, Upland, Claremont, which were offsprings of the main settlement, which was in Riverside. Many of them began to move into the cities as operators of small shops, restaurants, and grocery stores in Los Angeles and San Francisco, and some eastern cities. And so after 1913, Pachappa camp began to dwindle. And because of a deep freeze, it hit citrus industry and wiped out orange grove. So unable to find employment, they began to relocate to LA, San Francisco, or Central California, such as Ridley and Dinuba. So by 1920, Ridley and Dinuba becomes a focal point of a Korean immigrant community in California. And Korean National Association was established by the Ahn Chang-ho, and it became the largest organization in America until 1940s and the 50s. It had chapters, 116 chapters all over the United States, as well as Hawaii and Mexico and China and even Soviet Union. And the only overseas Korean organization with worldwide chapters at the time. And I'm just going to skip this. And this is another historical photograph. This is Ahn Chang-ho with other multiracial labor force in Riverside. And this is the, during the course of a research project in the 2017, I also accidentally came across San Francisco Chronicle newspaper article, December 7, 1902, about a month and a half after Ahn Chang-ho and his wife arrived in San Francisco. It turned out they did an interview with the San Francisco Chronicle, and it was a full page reporting of Ahn Chang-ho and about Korea. And you notice not K, but C here, Korea. And the reporter was very interested in learning about Korea, unknown, hermit kingdom. They knew about China and Japan, but very little was known about Korea. So they decided to do an interview of Ahn Chang-ho and his wife, and they published this in the full page. And no one knew about this full page San Francisco Chronicle article reporting until I accidentally uncovered it in 2016. So 114 years later, somehow I was able to find this newspaper. And this is the Korean Labor Bureau business card of Ahn Chang-ho. And this is, he often traveled frequently and wrote to his wife, address 1532 Pachappa Avenue. And this is the Philip Ahn's baptism card. And this is the 1911 Korean National Association of North America Convention, which was held in Riverside. The delegates, they took a photograph along with women and children. And this is, again, I mean, somewhat controversial, but I'm claiming that Riverside is the birthplace of modern democracy of Korea altogether. Remember, the Korea was ruled by the king until 1910. And 9 years later, Chiang-ai-based Korean provisional government declared democratic republicanism as form of government. So it took 9 years. And how was that possible? And there was no debate, no opposition, and everyone decided to transform from monarchy to democratic republicanism form of government in just 9 years. And Korean historians don't know how it came about. No one knows until I'm claiming it originated from Riverside Pachappa camp. Because November 23rd to December 4th, 1911, Korean National Association of North America held convention, third convention. And at the convention, it was held, they passed 21 articles of governance, 21 resolutions. And I looked at this 21 article of governance. It was all about separation of powers. Separation of powers. In other words, Korean National Association was modeled after democratic republicanism, and the delegate was elected as a representative. They had their own central council, which acted as a central government, also the judicial system. So it really established the first democratic principle in 1911, year after Korea became colony of Japan in Pachappa camp in Riverside. It said Korean National Association was established by the constitutional republicanism. The Congress of the Korean National Association shall administer regional conference and under administrative supervision. The Congress of the Korean National Association shall legislate self-regulation of the regional conference pass temporary resolutions, elect officials, set budget, other authority. Will meet once a year, decide many issues based on regulation, and execute accordingly. This is, again, 1911, year after Korea became colony of Japan. Mary Peg Lee, she published autobiography called Quiet Odyssey. Quiet Odyssey. So those of you may be interested in, she doesn't just talk about Riverside, but also, Korean immigrant family constantly moving around in the state of California. So you may be interested in reading about our autobiography. This is about the family. And also, I found a very interesting report, annual report of the Board of Home Missions of the Presbyterian Church in the US, Presbyterian Church in the United States, 1918. It says, Riverside, another happy group of Christians, somewhat distinguished from other stations by the number of young wives and their children. This confirms the Riverside Pachappa camp is a family-based, very unique community. That's what it confirms. And during the course of my research project, I went to nearby cemetery, Evergreen Cemetery. I found this headstone. And I was really puzzled by the headstone. He says he's a member of a Korean National Association, as well as a Young Korean Academy. And it was kind of a very elaborate, distinguished, whereas other Koreans had a headstone like this on the ground, but it was standing up, right? So I knew he was somewhat important person, historically important person, but didn't know who he was. Turns out he served as a pastor of Korean mission. Also, he died, he passed away in 1919 in the buggy accident. And the press enterprise reported, and the Shinhan also reported, Suna Kim died instantly as he was thrown off of a buggy, according to Eun Kyung-lee in 1919. So it was kind of a sudden death. At the time, he was working as a baker at Mission Inn. Mission Inn is one of the most historically renowned hotel in Riverside. Mission Inn Hotel today has a festival of lights, which attracts more than 500,000 visitors every year. And more than 10 US presidents stayed at Mission Inn. So it's a very historically important hotel. But another interesting piece of this is that during his funeral, Miller is the owner of a Mission Inn, and he invited all the guests to his hotel, which is a very fancy hotel, and provided lunch, which is very unusual at the time. And some of you may know, at the time, Korean Asians were viewed as a second-class citizen. But Frank Miller was a very progressive individual, and he believed in egalitarianism, and he decided to invite all the guests to his hotel, Glenwood Mission Inn Hotel, which I found it very interesting. I found another headstone at Kim Tae-sun, and I didn't know who he was either, but he turns out died of cancer, according to Shinhan Minbo. And he was the eldest son of Suna Kim, which is, I don't know, I mean, in 1925, 6 years later, he passed away as well. And so I'm gonna skip this. Korean mission is under care of Calvary Presbyterian Church. And this is a bulletin of Calvary Presbyterian Church and dated 1909. It says Korean Mission. It has a 1532 Pachappa Avenue. They were officially affiliated with Calvary Presbyterian Church. And there were fire, destroyed the building. This is the pastor. And I also went to the Riverside Calvary Presbyterian Church and decided to look into their historical documents. As I was going through, I found some reference to Korean Mission, and this is some reference there. But more importantly, I found this, which is a Korean membership list. It lists all the Korean members who joined Korean Mission, when they joined, and when they left to another place. So this was a kind of a jackpot for me, historical documents. And I was really able to get their names, their identities, and so I was able to compile. However, in 1918, bulletin format changed, and Calvary Presbyterian Church no longer mentioned Korean Mission or Mexican Mission in their bulletin anymore. And so we know the Korean Pachappa camp ceased to exist as of 1918. And Shinhan actually reported the rumor of the closure of Korean National Association building, and it says it has difficulties, unable to maintain building, and so they reported this in early 1918, February 14, 1918. And in April 18, Korean language school, unable to maintain building, decided to combine with the church. July 4th, majority of members relocated to other areas, and Riverside chapter of KNA suspend meeting temporarily. Finally, November 10, 1918, Korean National Association Riverside chapter decided to move to nearby 1158 Vine Street, which ends Pachappa camp era. So we know Pachappa camp existed from 1904 to 1918. Maybe it's because only short-lived, 14 years. Historians didn't really carefully look into this Pachappa camp, but Pachappa camp is historically very important site, not only first Koreatown, but also I'm arguing birthplace of a modern Korean democracy. Another very important aspects of a Pachappa camp is the women played a major role. Again, it was right after Korea was practicing Confucianism. Women was always a secondary role to husband, the eldest son, and whatnot. But Pachappa camp, Korean women played major and active role. In the United States, women gained suffrage, voting rights in 1920. But Korean National Association granted full membership rights to women in 2 years earlier, 1918. And so as a result, in February 6, 1919, women in Pachappa camp decided to perform duty as a member of Korean National Association. And the Riverside chapter meeting at the held ceremony. Here in the ceremony, congratulatory remarks were delivered by Chung-sup Park and national anthem Chung-sup Ku's wife, Jung-sup Ku's wife. And speech usually is delivered by men, even today. But in this meeting, they had Chung-sup Park's wife delivered speech, which is remarkable, I think. And prayer were delivered by mother of Woon Kyung-lee. So, women of Pachappa camp were playing major and active roles as early as 1919, which is remarkable. And also, we praise decision made by women of the Riverside chapter of KNA who decided to perform duty equal to men. Woon Kyung-lee's wife, at the time she was 60 years old, working at the hospital, and decided to donate for our society and country. We praise her dedication, and in addition, all Korean households decided to make their own soy sauce by boycotting Japanese soy sauce. It was their way of contributing to independence movement, according to Shinhaminbo, September 18, 1919. And I'm going to skip this as a Hemet Valley incident. Hemet Valley incident is very important. I think it's very important because 11 workers from Riverside, Pachappa camp, were recruited by local farmer in Hemet Valley, white farmers. As soon as they arrived from Riverside to Hemet Station, they were met by more than 200 white laborers. They were chanting, Asians are not welcome. Go back to where you came from. And 11 workers from Riverside went to Hemet Valley as soon as they were driven out of town. So it's known as the Hemet Valley incident. The thing about this Hemet Valley incident is that when Japan found out about this, they decided to intervene on behalf of Korean immigrant workers, claiming Koreans in the United States are Japanese subjects. The embassy in Washington, D.C. officially launched a complaint to US government. So it became diplomatic issue between the United States and Japan. And Secretary of State William Jennings Bryan were contemplating ordered investigation of this incident. At the time, David Lee, the president of Korean National Association, sent a telegram to William Jennings Bryan saying, "We are not Japanese subjects, we are Koreans. Please recognize as a Koreans." Upon receiving this telegram, Secretary of the State William Jennings Bryan declared Koreans in the United States are not Japanese subjects, but they're Korean, and they will be represented by the Korean National Association. So Japan has no jurisdiction over Koreans in the United States. So Japan could not really intervene. And instead, Korean National Association and Korean immigrant workers in the United States were able to maintain their Korean identity and continue their independence activities in the United States, which is a very, very important historical event. And this is the youngest son of Ahn Chang-ho, Ralph Ahn, and his wife. And we had a kind of an exhibition in Riverside before Pachappa camp, exhibition. So in conclusion, Pachappa camp, Dosan's Republic, is the first and largest Koreatown in the United States at the time. And 국립협회 and Dosan Ahn Chang-ho carefully devised a plan to relocate Korean immigrants from Hawaii to San Francisco to Riverside and established Korean community in early 1900s. And the 국립협회 was established by the San Francisco Korean immigrants and Riverside residents in 1905, but they decided to establish headquarters in San Francisco. That's the reason why people knew of 국립협회 or cooperative association in San Francisco, but not about Riverside. Shinminhae is a new Korea society, secret organization that was established by Ahn Chang-ho in 1907. But before he left for Korea in 1907, he was initiated in Riverside in 1906. And 1911, Third Korean National Association of North America Convention was held in Riverside and established a democratic principle. Another important characteristic is that Pachappa camp is a family-based community with women and children, which was very unique, distinct. And early 1900, Pachappa camp served as focal point, mecca of Korean independence movement. And Pachappa camp also had a Korean mission, Korean school, 학교, birthday parties, discussion groups, and weddings, whatnot, total community settlement. And Pachappa camp, again, was the base camp for nationalist movement by organizing Koreans abroad. And Ahn Chang-ho was experimenting with his concept of a model community project, and also served as a focal point base camp for the independence war and unification movement. So Pachappa camp and one of the PhD thesis based on, after reading my book, she concluded Ahn Chang-ho's nationalist and independence movement activism was production and reproduction of success of Pachappa camp model community, according to Seung-won Choi, 2020, and she published the PhD thesis. I'm not sure if I have a few more times. Democratic Republicanism of Korea, kind of a genealogy. I'm arguing originated the Pachappa camp in 1905, cooperative association, which is 공립협회, led to Shinminhae New Korea Society in 1906, Korean National Association in 1909, and Korean National Association of North America Convention in 1911, and they established a Central Council and declared the Central Council is intangible government representing entire overseas Korean. They declared this and officially established Central Council in 1912. It's a kind of a government, intangible government. And Korean historians originate modern democratic republicanism to 1917 Daedong Declaration of Solidarity. They trace it to 1917. However, I'm arguing the Daedong Declaration of Solidarity is very similar to that of 21 Article of Governance that passed by the Korean National Association of North America Convention in 1911. It established separation of power. So it leads to Korean Provisional Government of Shanghai in 1919, which is extension of modern Korean Republic of Korea in 1948. So I'm kind of claiming it has been kind of recognized by the Korean historians yet, because no one knew of a Pachappa camp until now. But this is what I'm arguing, and I'm hoping to dialogue and engage in constructive understanding of historical origins of a democratic republicanism of modern Korea. So let me just stop here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.